Down here cleaning out my studio, moving some stuff around, and I pulled this guitar out of its case. This is my 2008 PRS CE22. Now, believe it or not, this guitar has a ton of sentimental value to me because this is essentially the guitar that got me through music school 10 years ago. And beyond that, this was the guitar that when I first started gigging, trying to figure out how to make a living in music, this was the guitar that I was doing everything on. And when I was playing it and kind of cleaning it up a little bit, I was thinking back to those early days for me in my career, and specifically back to the first real paid gig I ever landed. It was a terrible bar gig, one of those 4-hour long cover gigs with a bunch of drunk people and booze flying all over the place. But I got to thinking, and I realized that without that one gig, without that one particular night at a bar in Buckhead, Georgia, I would not be here where I am right now. I wouldn't have this YouTube channel. I wouldn't have done the things in my career that I've done this far. I probably wouldn't have played the gigs I've played on the records I've played on, and more importantly, known and worked with the people that I've gotten to work with over the last 10 years. And when I think to how I landed that gig, it was from a Craigslist ad. So I can essentially say that my entire career thus far has been thanks to Craigslist. So back in 2009, I was in sort of a dark place. School had never really been my thing. I had barely graduated high school. I went to college for a year and promptly failed out, had terrible grades. My GPA, in fact, was so low that the college I went to sent a letter home after my freshman year basically saying, your money's no good here, don't come back. So I got a couple of jobs. I was working 2 jobs at the time and trying to figure things out. And throughout that time, I had been learning guitar. Since I was a freshman or so in high school, I'd been teaching myself guitar. And for me, guitar and music was the first thing in my life that I had ever had that really clicked. It was the first thing I got. It was the first thing I was willing to sink hours and hours of time into learning. And so I felt that maybe music would be a cool thing to try and pursue. The problem for me, though, was I didn't know any musicians. I actually didn't even know that you could really make a living in music. At that time, nobody in my family were musicians or played instruments or really did anything musical. So there was no sort of North Star. There's nobody I could look to and say, oh, that's what I want to do. So for me, the school thing made a lot of sense because I saw this as a place where I could go and not only learn about playing guitar and becoming a better musician, but actually how to make a living doing this thing. So I ended up making it through school. It was tough. I was not the best student. I didn't have the best grades. I was certainly not the best player. I was not the most musical. I didn't have the best ear, but I graduated and immediately wanted to start gigging. The only problem was I didn't know anybody that was gigging. So in a weird moment of desperation, I pulled up my local Craigslist and just started perusing the gig section. And I just stumbled on this one listing that said something along the lines of guitar player wanted, bar gig, Buckhead, Friday night, $75. That was literally all the information I had. I didn't know who it was. Didn't know if there was going to be any rehearsals, didn't know the music we would be playing, didn't know where or how long we would be playing. But I responded. I sent an email and said, hey, I'm Rhett. I just graduated from AIM. I'm available Friday night. I would love to come and play. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what gear to bring. I didn't know how big the place was. I didn't obviously know what we would be playing. So to be honest, I was kind of terrified. To me, this was it. This was the big leagues. I was going to play in front of human beings and get paid to play my guitar with other human beings on a stage. As far as I was concerned, I had made it at that point. But that first night ended up being quite serendipitous. The drummer on the gig was a guy named Aaron. Had never met him before, obviously never played with him before, but we hit it off pretty quick. He was a great drummer. He was fun to play with. He was a funny guy. We had a good night. We ended up sharing some drinks after the show and just kind of hanging out, and then went our separate ways. Until one day I get a phone call, answer the phone, and played that game that I'm sure we've all played before where you don't know who you're talking to, but you don't want them to know that you don't know who you're talking to. So you kind of have to suss out in the conversation like, hey, man, what's up? Try and drop little clues, see if they'll pick it up. So I ended up figuring it out. Oh, this is Aaron, the drummer I played with on that gig last summer. And he was calling me to essentially offer me a gig. At that time, he had been playing with a pretty new singer-songwriter, guy named Carl Dillon, and they were looking for a guitar player. And Aaron, for whatever reason, thought of me first. Now, this was incredibly exciting because I was wanting to get into original music. I was getting tired of the cover band scene and tired of the church gig scene that I had gotten into since then. I wanted to start playing original music. And this was an opportunity to do that. So I jumped at it. Now, those first few months with Carl were incredibly exciting for me. I was traveling with music for the first time. I went to South by Southwest for my first time to play. Also, right around this time is when my now wife, Tilly, and I were seriously talking, and we ended up dating. Right when I got back from South by Southwest is when we officially started dating. So this was a great time in my life. And through that, it came time for Carl to make his second record. And he started shopping for producers. At the time, he was a big fan of a band called Need to Breathe. They were big in sort of the crossover Christian Americana rock market, and they had about 3 really great records out at the time. And we found out that the man who had produced those records that we all really liked lived in Atlanta, and his name was Rick Beato. They ended up negotiating and coming to an agreement and agreed that Rick Beato would produce Carl's record. And that was my first opportunity to get into a recording studio and make an album. It was going to be my guitar parts, songs that I had helped create. We were going to be putting them on records. I was beside myself. I was so excited. I was also terrified, but mainly excited. So at the end of Carl's recording process, I very sheepishly asked Rick and Ken if it would be okay for me to drop by the studio a couple days a week and just sort of hang out. I told them I'd be happy to help. I'll sweep floors or clean bathrooms or do whatever. I just wanted to be in the studio. And they were super cool. They said, absolutely, come anytime you want. And so after a few months of that, Rick came to me and offered an internship. And that's where things for me really started to take off. I was in the studio multiple days a week, working on records, playing on records, engineering, getting to meet musicians and bands and songwriters from all over North America. And through that internship, I met bands that I play with today. Noah Guthrie and Good Trouble. Jesse Wilson, Muddy Magnolias. I met them at Rick's studio and worked on their record. So through Noah, I got to start touring and traveling all over North America and now the world, playing music consistently. Through Muddy Magnolias and Jesse, I got to get my foot in the door around Nashville and start to play and build relationships and friendships with people up there. And then after all of that, Rick, after starting his YouTube channel, ended up pushing me to start this YouTube channel in January of 2018, and here we are. If you would have told me 10 years ago, when I was brand new at music school, that when you're 30, you'll have a YouTube channel and have played all these gigs and toured and had the opportunity to learn from people like Rick and Ken and write music and produce music and play music, I wouldn't have believed you. At the time, I wasn't even convinced that I was going to graduate music school based on my previous performance in school. I never would have thought it was possible, but when you distill all this stuff down, for me, I can point to one gig, one night, one opportunity where I met one person and that one relationship just blossomed. And from that relationship, from that friendship and that working relationship, all of this other stuff branched off. It's actually pretty amazing, to be honest. And I think there's a few lessons in this story. First and foremost, take advantage of every opportunity you can, especially when you're starting out, because you never know what's going to come from even the lamest gig. You don't know who's going to be watching, who's going to be listening. You don't know who you're going to be playing with, what they're going to end up going and doing in their career in the future. And with that in mind, be great to work with. Be on time. Be prepared. Be a good hang. Be somebody that people want to work with, somebody that they want to spend time with. And for me, the most important lesson, and one that I have to remind myself of on almost a daily basis is to just keep going. Throughout the last 10 years, there have been countless times where I have failed. I've come up short. I've felt like quitting. I've been discouraged. I've looked at other people and compared myself and my path to what they're doing and to their success, and felt that I'm not good enough, or that I won't ever reach the level that that person is at, or won't ever be as talented or as great a player as that person is. But through it all, I've managed, not on my own, but with the help of people around me, to keep going, to keep playing, to keep working, to keep making videos, to keep practicing, to keep gigging. Just keep going. Before you know it, that big scary mountaintop that was miles and miles away when you first started out will be right beneath your feet. That was another thing actually one of my teachers at AIM told me years ago that stuck with me. So, all in all, I can owe my career thus far to Craigslist. Now, I will say I wouldn't recommend Craigslist as a place to look for gigs. I think I actually got pretty lucky on that one. I made this video because I felt like sharing the story, and hopefully it'll help somebody out there. And as for the old PRS here, I think I'm going to leave it out of its case. Play it a little bit more. I think it deserves a little more recognition and love for the work it put in to helping me get started in my career a decade ago. Down in the comment section, let me know your story. I want to know. How did you get to where you are, or where do you want to go? I think it'd be a cool discussion to get going on down there. If you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description box down below. My tone course is down there. You can also sign up for the green room and check out the affiliate links. That is the gear that I use to make these videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, sticking around to the end of a long sort of monologue. Hope you enjoyed it. My name is Rhett Shull, and remember, there is no plan B.